Good morning, Tribal Jazzman Scholar. I'm going to make a rather bold claim that many of the problems in the contemporary modern world stem directly from our failure to guide people through the transition from child to adult, to give them a rite of passage that's commensurate with the intensity of the time of early adolescence, age 11 to 14. That period of time, at least in America, in my lifetime, has been an age and a developmental phase that has been ignored, save for remnants of ritualized transitions, as in the confirmation or the rite of passage in the Judaism, the bat mitzvah and bar mitzvah, sweet 16. There's really very little going on around that age that is healthy for children developmentally. They are given the totally inappropriate middle school, 90% of children going to public middle schools at that age, and encountering myriad class changes and schedules in which adults don't get to know them very intimately. The time when they really need adult guidance and mentoring, there's none. So I'm going to make the claim here that some of the critical problems in the world, from our environmental disregard, the collapse of the ecosystems, the biosphere degradation, the pending environmental catastrophes that seem to be heading our way as a result of, at the very least, global warming, that issue, the issue of many adults behaving in infantile ways, aggressively in a dominator social structure, lack of cooperation, lack of problem-solving skills among adults. This I also attribute to a failed adolescent initiatory ordeal. We find among adolescents themselves great distrust of anyone who's in the adult world. So we have a generation gap, and in that context we lose ancestors because we don't connect vertically to the elders, and therefore we don't extend past elders to the deceased ancestors. So we have no longer a connection to people who've come before us. We don't celebrate the heroism and deeds of great people in our own lineages to give us a sense of role model and appropriate adult behavior and acts of heroism that we can emulate. So youth are alienated in direct proportion to the extent to which they have been disposed of into public middle schools without guidance. So we have issues of the environment, issues of lack of adolescent connectedness to adults. Then we have extreme adolescent risk behavior because they're not getting mentored by elders who give them rigorous challenges that are appropriate to the rite of passage. So they look for that themselves through all sort of unhealthy behaviors, from drinking huge amounts of alcohol to racing cars to walking on bridge railings to vandalizing buildings and doing other criminal mischief because of the stories they can then tell about that to their peers. This creation of hero identity in the absence of adults is risk behavior that is extremely dangerous. We also have a loss of a connectedness to place. When adolescents are initiated, initiatory experiences take place in embedded wild nature. Youth find themselves given challenges that require them to feel their connection to the earth, to the place where they exist, and this awakens the ecological unconscious, the sense of stewardship of the earth. It also binds them, connects them to elders who guide them in that transition in a relationship of authenticity and trust. It bridges the limited horizontal relationships and creates vertical relationships across generations. It gives elders, once again, a purpose, instead of relegating them to nursing and retirement homes where they really have no stories to share with youth. It brings them back into the fold. It takes the youthful energy of early adolescence and it brings it into the adult world through initiation so that it revitalizes culture instead of destroying culture. The absence of the rite of passage is responsible for a host of problems. And one of the most critical ones that I haven't mentioned is that in the adolescent rite of passage, there is the first glimpse of one's gift. The idea that one comes into the world destined for something great, something necessary, something vital to the continuation of earth, of life, of culture. And that as youth are initiated, adult mentors and elders see the genius of the child, see the gift of the youth, and welcome it into the world. And in that embrace and welcome of the child's gift coming from elders other than the parents, the child acknowledges and feels the vitality of their own uniqueness and their own destiny and their own gift. And they begin to pursue it, even if they're not entirely sure what it is. They understand calling, and they become committed to a process of discovering one's gift, developing the necessary skills to express one's gift in the world. And that's the beginning of living meaningfully and not living a life with menial work for which one has little enthusiasm or commitment. So again, we see that the rite of passage, the initiatory experience, is a critical part of the healthy unfolding of the individual, the maturing into an adult who is not prone to infantilism and adolescent behaviors and destructive dominator social orders. We see the awakening of the ecological unconscious and stewardship sensibilities for the earth. And we see cross-generational connectedness. We see a role of elders in as something more than just filling the beds in a nursing home. We see connection to place in that nature immersion in the rite of passage, a connection to ancestors. We rebirth within ourselves. We have a renaissance of ancestral ways in a contemporary context. And I would challenge our federal government to invest in adolescence a little differently. By the most generous estimates, public education spends about $10,000 per child to educate them in a year. And about half of that gets to the school to pay teacher salaries and buy materials and maintain the buildings. The rest of it goes to administrative tasks, both at state and local levels, federal levels as well. So the $10,000 investment per child, I would suggest we triple that for those years of 11 to 15. For 4 years, we triple it. So that's $20,000 additionally that we would give to each of those children. Now, there are approximately 20 million children in the United States that age, of whom 18 million go to public school. So we take that 18 million and we multiply it by $20,000 times 4 years, and we come up with about $1.4 trillion that would cost to serve one generation in a much more generous investing manner. 1.4 trillion is approximately the total U.S. expenditure annually on the military. We need to reorder our priorities. We might not need to spend that much on the military if we were willing to invest in our youth. And that's it for Tribal Jazz Band Scholar. Thanks.